Hi everyone, and welcome to Spirit Basics, the show for both the beginner and the avid connoisseur of fine spirits. I'm Jennifer Allan.
And I'm Stephen Olson. In today's episode, we're considering it part one of our two-part look at the mystical mezcals of Mexico. Now, let's start here. Tequila is mezcal, but not all mezcal is tequila.
Okay, so tell us, what exactly is mezcal?
Mezcal is the word that we use to describe all of the agave-based spirits that are made in Mexico.
Now, agave, is that a cactus?
Most people think it is, and it looks a lot like a cactus, but in actuality, the agave plant is a succulent. It's a member of the lily family, believe it or not. It has its own species. It's called Agavacea, and as a matter of fact, there are probably something like 400 of them that grow all over the world, of which about a half a dozen are used for mezcal production throughout Mexico. In tequila, in Jalisco, we actually grow the blue agave, or Tequila Weber variety blue, which is specific to that area and is hugely instrumental in the flavors that are in tequila.
Okay, well, can you tell us a little bit more about the origins of tequila? And is it true that tequila, or should I say mezcal, North America's first distilled spirit?
It is absolutely true. As a matter of fact, the Native Americans in Mexico were drinking a beer or a wine that they called pulque, which was actually a naturally fermenting beverage that came from the heart of the agave plant. Now understand that the Native Americans only used this for religious ceremony, for the royalty, for soldiers going into battle. It was a very special beverage, but when the Spanish found it, they called it vino de mezcal. They were in desperate need of alcohol. And as you can imagine, soon after they brought those alembic stills that we talked about that the Moors brought to Spain, they brought them right over to Mexico and began distilling. Now, distillation works its way to Jalisco. And Tequila is actually the name of a town in the state of Jalisco. Tequila comes from the Tequila Indians, and the word actually means lava hill. It's a volcano. It's at this time an inactive volcano, but these volcanic soils in the area are a big part, as well as the altitude and the climate, of governing how this blue agave grows. And you can actually taste the difference in the spirit itself. The other mezcals that grow around Mexico we'll talk about in another episode. As a matter of fact, in our next episode, we'll center in on the lore and the history of mezcal. But for this episode, we're going to focus on the king of mezcal, tequila.
Well, for the king of cocktails, we'll turn now to Dale Degroff for a little bit more history behind tequila.
Tequila is to Mexico what wine is to France, what whiskey is to Ireland. It's such a part of the Mexican experience. Way back in the beginning of the 19th century, when they were fighting for their independence from Spain, tequila became such an important product. It became a focus of national pride, this spirit, this agave spirit. And in the 1910s, when Pancho Villa and Zapata were fighting for the poor, downtrodden people of Mexico, it was again a rallying point. Tequila became the beverage of the poor and the downtrodden. And in 1917, when they wrote their new constitution and redistributed some of the lands, by then tequila had become a Mexican icon. It was equal to, if not as important as the flag. It was a symbol of Mexican pride. But you know something? In the northern hemisphere here, especially in Canada, where to this day I don't think tequila has become a really important presence, but certainly in the lower 48, in the last 10 years, the growth has been phenomenal. It has exploded in popularity, because I have to tell you, in 1974, when I was tending bar in New York City, I hadn't tasted tequila yet, because there weren't very many bars in New York that even had tequila. It wasn't until I moved to the Southwest, which is where tequila made its entrance into the northern hemisphere, if you will, through the film colony of Los Angeles. These people all had homes down in Acapulco. Bing Crosby was one of the first people to import tequila into the United States. But that growth was sort of limited to the Southwest. And it wasn't until something happened in cuisine, when we started to fall in love with big flavor. The whole movement that began with Nouvelle Cuisine and with Alice Waters and Chez Panisse, that exploded into such an excitement in the American sort of fusion cuisine, which has grown up, and now the famous group of American chefs. Because you have to tell you, when I went to a restaurant in 1969 or 70, when I first arrived in New York, if you went to a top restaurant, it was a French or an Italian person in that kitchen as the head chef, not an American, but that's changed. And I think when we fell in love with big flavor, spirits like tequila came right along, because not only did we fall in love with big flavor, we fell in love with all these ethnic cuisines, with Tex-Mex, Southwestern, And now everything Latin is so popular. And I think coming right along with that is this love affair that we have with tequila, with this whole thing of dining on little food like tapas and so forth and so on. And it was in Mexican restaurants where we first learned how to drink cocktails with food. We always had margaritas with our Mexican food. We didn't drink wine. So this is a tradition that goes way back and in that Latin Mexican tequila kind of tradition.
Up next, we'll take a closer look at the fascinating ancient production methods behind producing tequila.
And our spirit insiders, Morgen and Scott, venture out into the spirit world. We'll have their story and more when Spirit Basics returns.
Welcome back to Spirit Basics. It's time now to take a closer look at how tequila is made.
Now, I know that all spirits are made from either beer or wine,
That's
but
right.
how do they make a spirit out of the agave plant?
Well, think of it as a beer or wine of agave. I mean, the first step is to take the sugars of the agave and turn them into something fermentable, okay? What's interesting is, unlike grapes that are harvested every year in the vintage, the agave plant doesn't become mature until it's at least 8 or maybe even 10 years old. And that's determined by a farmer known as a humidor. The humidor is instrumental to making great tequila because the humidor not only knows when to harvest, but how to harvest the piña or the corazón, the heart of the agave. Now this agave is taken out of the plant, it's trimmed, it's baked or steamed in hornos or hornitos or ovens. It's then fermented and eventually distilled in small copper pot stills.
Okay, well, why do they have different names like reposado or añejo? Are those styles of tequila?
Yes, exactly. They're styles. Basically, it all comes back to aging. There are actually 3 styles. Blanco, or plata, as we call it. Plata means silver. Blanco means white. White tequila means that from the time it's distilled till the time it's bottled can only be 60 days. So on the 60th day, it's no longer Blanco. And reposado means rested. And that actually means that from those 60 days, 2 months, up to 1 year, the wine, the agave spirit, is rested in oak casks, and they can be large oak casks. Añejo, or aged, means that the product sits in small oak casks, French or American, for a minimum of 1 year.
Well, for a deeper look at tequila and the agave plant, we turn now to our spirit guide.
What fascinates me about tequila is how the smallest detail can change everything in terms of this drink. I mean, where the agave plant comes from, how old it is, exactly the elevation it was grown. All these things will have a profound impact upon what the drink really tastes like. Let's take the way you actually cook the piña, okay, the cabeza, or whatever you want to call it, right? The heart of the plant. If you steam it in autoclaves, you tend to get, I think, a milder flavor. If you bake it in hornos, well, then it has a totally different flavor. It certainly picks up more of a roasted flavor, I think more of an exotic flavor. When we get to mezcal, we'll be talking about smoking it in pits and it gets really, really exotic and way out there. But let's stick to tequila for a second. Not only does the way I cook it, whether I do it in an oven, an hornos, or in the steamers, the autoclaves, and I certainly will admit that I greatly prefer tequila when it's done in the hornos. Not only will that have an impact upon it, but actually how I crush the fruit itself. Do I do it in a mill, just a standard old mill, or do I do it old style, which is what's called the Tejana method? It's a big old rock's attached to a donkey, okay, with a stick. Donkey walks around in a big circle in this big, stone vat with all these piñas in it, slowly crushing all these piñas up. I worked with a distillery once where we cut a 1/2-inch groove into this stone, into the Tejana, and it changed everything. The flavor was totally different in what we ended up with in the tequila. It tasted much earthier, much sharper. So each of these can have a huge impact upon the flavor that you end up with in your bottle.
Now that we've taken a brief look at the history, origins, and the process of making tequila, let's have an inside look.
Our spirit insiders, Morgen and Scott, went out to see what they could learn about tequila.
Thanks, Steve and Jennifer. I'm down here at the Congo room talking to Alejandro. We're going to talk all about tequila and see what I can learn from Alejandro on tequila. So Alejandro, this is Nuevo Latino. What exactly does Nuevo Latino have to do with tequila?
Nuevo is new, right? The new Latin trend. This started about 12 years ago. There was a man called Douglas Rodriguez, Cuban chef, stayed in Miami. And the big thing that he discovered is that it is hard to make your culture impose it on others based on authenticity. He learned pretty soon through a Chinese actually friend, funny enough, that the key is to blend, right? To blend your culture with North American.
So do they use a lot of tequila actually in the dishes?
Absolutely. One of the things that you have always seen in food is using wine as you cook and brandies. What that does is the alcohol will evaporate and the flavors will stay. We do the same thing. Like we have some prawns that actually we put tequila on them. As the alcohol evaporates, the flavors of the tequila are still sitting on it.
Now, what about your margaritas? You have your classic margaritas. You say you serve them on ice. You don't blend them up, but you also have other flavors.
Absolutely, we make them mango. We make them with passion fruit. We make them with guava. Once again, the idea that we have developed is that globalization of things, is mixing of the ingredients, getting to a point that you can grab an ingredient such as lychee fruit and make a margarita with lychee, and it tastes delicious. And that is what Nuevo Latino is. It's mixing our flavors, in this case an ingredient that is tequila, and putting ingredients from somewhere else, like lychee in this case.
Well, that sounds like lots of fun, and I think maybe since this margarita is sitting here, I might have to try it out.
Please do. Salud.
Steve, Jennifer, back to you guys. Salud.
You know, we agave geeks tend to take our tequila very seriously, but it seems like every time we open a bottle, the party follows.
Sounds like a pretty good time.
It always is.
Up next, we continue our look into the world of tequila, how to drink it, and how to use it in some of your favorite cocktails. That's when Spirit Basics returns.
Spirit Basics is brought to you in part by Willow Park Wines and Spirits.
Welcome back to Spirit Basics, the show for everyone who wants to learn more about the world's best cocktails. Right now, we're going to talk about tequila and the proper way to drink it.
And before we do that, let's just reestablish that there are no rules or regulations about drinking tequila or any other spirit. And for those of you in our audience who have had a bad tequila experience and can't go there, let me just explain, you probably had too much bad tequila. I am living proof that you can come back from a bad tequila experience, and I want you to understand that it's by drinking moderate amounts of 100% agave premium tequila. I love this stuff in moderate amounts. But here's the deal. The flavors of tequila growing at those altitude levels, in that soil, in that microclimate, it's totally unique to the spirit world. There's a vegetable, cucumber, green pepper quality. There's an acidity that comes from, like lemons and limes, a slight saltiness, a terroir, an earthiness. It's an amazing beverage. And when we make a reposado or an añejo, by putting it in small oak casks, we add the oak spices, the vanilla, the butterscotch, the textures. We soften the tequila. It makes it really quite unique.
Now, you said salt and lime, and it kind of sounds like you're talking about a margarita.
Well, the margarita is certainly the most popular cocktail, and it is indeed salt and lime. And many people do like to drink salt and lime because it actually intensifies or brightens some of the flavors that are inherent in the agave-based spirit.
Well, speaking of margaritas, we turn now to our spirit advisor for more on tequila and the margarita.
The margarita is a fantastic food cocktail with its tartness, and certainly the salt makes it go well with shellfish and seafood and things like that. And the tartness makes it go well with just about anything because it really is tartness. At the end of the day, acidity, whatever you want to call it, that lemon lime character of a margarita and so many other drinks that make those drinks able to clean the palate up, and virtually any food works. Now, I've got to give my version of the margarita, which is, while lots of real expensive margaritas out there have añejo in them, I don't buy that. The idea of a margarita is it's supposed to be palate cleansing and tart and refreshing, and añejo is full and honeyed and caramel and butterscotch and all that stuff. Añejo tequila doesn't belong to me in a margarita. Strawberry margaritas, okay, well, now we're in the province of the whole new sticky cocktail, and that's fine too. I think that's fine for some people, but that's not really where I like to go. I like to go with the bracing character of just a good Blanco or Silver, unaged tequila. I certainly don't like the Habano avocado or sweeter styles of tequila because, once again, I'm sweetening up a drink that's supposed to be that tart, and its tartness is what makes it go well with foods. But while we're talking the margarita, hey, let's talk about the Paloma. The Paloma is a drink you drink a lot when you're down in Mexico, and it's a lemon lime drink with some tequila in it, and it doesn't necessarily need the salt, and you can even use a bottle of squirt if you want to for your lemon lime.
Well, it's time now for our master mixologist, King Cocktail, Dale Degroff, to make a classic cocktail using tequila.
We all have our tequila stories, and I'm not telling mine. Anyway, this might have been the tequila that you started drinking first. It's Cuervo Gold, and it was considered the premium in its day. It was one of the early tequilas on the market, and it's a very good tequila, don't get me wrong. But a lot of us are drinking 100% blue agave, which Stephen and Jennifer have already told you about. It's a green agave flavor. This has some sugar cane in it, that's a little sweeter, and it has a little coloring in it, so it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to make my margarita, my straight up simple margarita, with the Sauza Hornitos 100% blue agave reposado, which means rested. A little time in oak. I don't want a tequila that's a long time in oak like an añejo because I want the green agave flavor to come through. That's why I'm going to use this one for my margarita. But first, let me prepare my glass. I'm going to frost half of the rim, half because maybe they don't want salt. They can turn it around and use the other side. I'm going to do half with salt. I've cut a piece of lime exactly the width that I want the frosting to be, and I'm going to wet just the portion of the glass that I want to put salt on. And I'm not going to turn it upside down, wet it, and then stick it into the salt because I don't want salt on the inside of the glass. I only want salt on the outside of the glass. So as I drag it across the salt and then take off the excess, you see I got a beautiful frosting, but nothing in here, only on the outside, only on half. Let's make a drink. So I'm going to use fresh limes. Don't use the mix. Let me show you what I mean. Remember that wonderful formula I gave you for sweet and sour style drinks, and this is in fact a sweet and sour style drink. You want about 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice, and I need a tad more. You want 1 ounce of the sweet ingredient. The sweet ingredient is going to be a little bit of orange liqueur. That's perfect. I'm using Cointreau. It's a premium triple sec, proprietary triple sec. I'm going to double the amount of lime juice and just a tad more. Then I'm going to add my shot of Sauza Hornitos 100% blue agave tequila. If you wanted to make this as a frozen drink, it's not impossible. All you have to do is add more sugar. Don't buy the mix, just add more sugar. If I put an ounce of the sweet ingredient, you stick with that ounce, but then you add about 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of sugar water when you put it in the blender, because all that ice is going to create so much water that you have to have sugar to carry the flavor through. What do you think that mix is? It's all sugar and water. So why not use the real thing, real lime juice, just add a little more sweetener. Use your ounce of triple sec and about 2 ounces of simple syrup. Shake this really hard. It's going to taste better, I promise you. There we go. Strain it. Yeah. Thing of beauty. If you wanted to, you could float the thinnest little wheel of lime right on top. But it looks so pretty with the frosting on the rim, you don't need very much. But just get a little hair-thin piece of lime like that and drop it on top, and you have a perfect drink. Steve and Jennifer, I think I'll try it.
You know, great tequilas are some of the most complex spirits in the world, and because of that balance, they can be incredibly versatile for making all different kinds of cocktails.
I do love a good margarita, though.
As we all do.
Well, after the break, we get cooking. Let's see if we can whip up some delicious dishes using tequila. Welcome back to Spirit Basics. We're in the kitchen and we're joined by our spirit chef, Chef Allan. Great to see you.
Buenos dias, Jennifer.
Buenos dias. Well, today we're talking about cooking with tequila. Now, when I think of cooking with tequila, I think of salt and lime. So would you want to add the tequila to those kind of dishes that need that citrus flavor?
Well, for sure we could do that, but I think with tequila we have to realize that it's kind of got a bit of a bad rap. Most people use it for shooters, but it's so much more. Tequilas now, you get a variety of them with different tastes. Some are more herbaceous, so they taste like plants. Some are smoky and almost taste like some of the other distilled spirits we've tasted. So yeah, you can never go wrong using a little bit of lime and salt when you're using tequila, but it's so much more and it's got so much depth to add to dishes.
Well, as you said, there's different kinds of tequila. We've got Blanco, Reposado, and Añejo, each with its own unique flavor. Which kind of tequila would you want to use in your recipe?
Well, for me, I'd like one with a stronger flavor, the more smokier ones, because what we're really looking for here is rather than with some of our clear spirits, rather than just using them to sort of bring things up, we actually want to enhance the flavors. We want to add flavor. So the more flavorful the tequila, the better it is to use. So that's the kind that I like to use.
Okay, well, we have some colorful examples of some recipes with tequila. What do we have over here?
Well, the first dish we have is Mexican, a classic coastal Mexican dish. It's a prawn and tequila kebab, and really what we've got is we're using the tequila here as a marinade, which is great for. And remember when we talked about vermouth, about a stronger flavor, this is actually going to add, we've marinated vegetables, we marinated prawns, and it's going to add an awful lot of flavor, and then it's grilled with a little bit of bacon, so it's got the smokiness. A really, really nice way to use tequila because you can taste it afterwards.
And what do we have here? It looks like chicken.
Well, from Mexico, we go a little bit further north where they cook with tequila a lot into Texas. And this is a Texas-style tequila chicken. And in this case, the tequila's in almost a creamy sauce that we've made with some really strong flavors, some cilantro, some soy. And we've got, you can see we use some cilantro on top. But we've also got almost the holy trinity of Southern cooking in the States, which is the onions and some red peppers and green peppers. And all of that sweetness goes really well with the tequila.
So nice and colorful and so flavorful, or it smells just absolutely amazing. The only thing missing from this is a nice frosty margarita.
Right, and for me, a dark Mexican beer. We're not going to the wine cellar with this stuff.
Great. Well, if you'd like to try these recipes at home, just log on to our website. Over to you now, Stephen.
Thanks, Jennifer. You know, I have to say, I like cooking with tequila almost as much as I like drinking it. Well, that's it for this edition of Spirit Basics. Make sure and join us on our next episode when we further explore the magic mezcals of Mexico. This is Stephen Olson, and for Jennifer Allan and our entire team here at Spirit Basics, we'll see you next week. Salud.
Special thanks to Willow Park Wine and Spirits, whose dedication to providing knowledge, awareness, and service to their customers has made this show possible.